All this time, Rabbi Yisrael Jacobson is in America. And he is sending Bochrim he's learning, he's a Rav in Bronzeville and in Borough Park, and he's learning with Bochrim over there, with boys over there, and he's warming them up. Some he's sending to yeshiva to start with, local yeshivas. Another Bochrim that he's taking from that are already in local yeshivas, he's learning with them Tanya, he's bringing with them, he's what we call today inspiring them, and he used to send them to Torah Chetmimim. And the stories upon stories of different Bochrim that he sent to Torah Chetmimim, they would go for a number of years, some ended up staying, most ended up coming back. The famous story with the boy that was caught reading novels happened with one of these boys. There was a boy in Chetimim that was caught reading novels when novels in those days, and it was like catching boys. There was a smartphone. That was the Nisayon of those days. And the Frierdiker Rebbe, they before they sent him away, the Rebbe called him in, asked him why he's reading the novel. He explained that his mother doesn't want him to forget the language. And the Frierdiker Rebbe told him to read different. The Frierdiker Rebbe told him at the time, it looks like today, I don't know if people would understand it, but at the time, the Frierdiker Rebbe told him to read his mother was worried he's going to come to America, he's going to come to Poland, he's going to forget the language, but who knows what's going to be. So he sent a few long books. It was his fifth time reading the book already. So the Rebbe told him to read books about politics. The Rebbe said that the novels are matama amoyach va'alev, because when a person reads a novel, it's a good story. His heart starts to pump. He gets emotionally attracted, emotionally drawn into it, and it's just you don't put down the novel and go on to the next thing. It's still percolating in your mind a little bit. But the Rebbe said, in politics is not in your head and not in your heart. Obviously, we have a different nisayon. Some people have a different nisayon in these days. Whatever. But okay. So we saw Jacobson ascending Bachrim. A couple of months before, in the meantime, Hitler rises to power. And they make the arrangement, he takes Czechoslovakia and he makes the agreement with England, and he's going against the agreement. And everybody knows that in Europe there's going to be a war. And a couple of months before Elul, in the middle of Sivan, the Frierdiker Rebbe gets there's a message that comes from Yisrael Jacobson to the Frierdiker Rebbe that he has a group of Bochrim he wants to send, but the parents are very worried. He himself is worried. There's a war. The parents are worried about this war that's supposed to break out, and should he send them? And the Frierdiker Rebbe says yes. Now that winter, the Frierdiker Rebbe was quietly considering moving to America. It seems that it has nothing to do with the war. The Frierdiker Rebbe was far from the only Rebbe. Now, I need to be marked. The Frierdiker Rebbe sent my grandfather away from Poland in 1933, and he told him Poland is not a place for Yidden anymore. So when we're dealing with Ruach HaKodesh, in 1933, the Frierdiker Rebbe is saying that Poland's not a place for Yidden. But in 1939, the Frierdiker Rebbe told these Bochrim to come. The Frierdiker Rebbe himself didn't want to leave. Not just the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Gerer Rebbe was in Eretz Yisrael a couple of months before the war, and he came back. He came back to Poland, and then to get him to leave Poland again was very complicated. You had others that left Poland and they came back and they didn't want to leave. They said they'll die with the Chassidim. But a group of Bochrim arrived mamish 2 weeks before the war. I read if you read the book of one of them was Rabbi from Hecht. If you read his book, he describes he said that for him, those 2 weeks that he had in the yeshiva was worth. He got more from those 2 weeks than he got ever again in his life. He was an American boy that arrived in Chetimim. But so the Frierdiker Rebbe arrives. So these Bochrim arrive. It's a Friday morning. It's a bright sunny day, very hot. They're walking from the dorm they gave them a bit more of a comfortable dorm. The first day they came, it was lunch break. There was a longer lunch break in Poland, like in Eretz Yisrael. So they came with their mitts and the balls, and they took out their mitts and their balls, and they started to play. And the Polish Bochrim looked at them as if they didn't know what was flying over here. And these are boys, they had break. What do you think is going to happen? Anyway, so they see planes flying overhead, and they were convinced that they were Polish planes that were practicing, because everybody understood there was going to be a war. Those planes were not Polish planes practicing; they were German planes, and they had begun the bombing. This is Erev Shabbos, Yud Zayin Elul. The first thing the Frierdiker Rebbe did was arranged for these Bochrim to get out. It was quite complicated. They had to walk. They were in Otvotsk. Otvotsk is a half an hour drive from Varsha. It shouldn't have taken so long, but it's a war, and it took them a very long time. They ended up having to walk half the way. The Friedrich Rebbe told them to pack their bags. They went into Yechidus. The Rebbe told them not to be scared because every bomb has an address, and their names are not on any of the bombs. And therefore, don't be scared. They went to the American consulate. They took them 2 weeks. Took them 12 days to get to Riga, to get to Latvia. But from there, they were going to get back to America. It took them, and in Riga, it took them. They were in Riga for a good few weeks. What was fascinating to me, after the whole, their story it's a harrowing story. But after all of that, when I was reading it they all describe it in their own way. When I was reading from Avraham Hecht, he describes how they learned and davened and verbringed in Riga. They're running. I don't know, when I need to fly tomorrow, when I still need to book a ticket, my mind is somewhere else. And these are boys that are trying to get out of Europe, trying to get back home. Their parents are desperately worried. And he's describing the verbringings that they had and how much they learned. They were able to settle in for a few weeks and how geschmack it was. And because they knew that once they get back to America, it's going to be different. And it's just very interesting. Anyway, once they left, this was Friday. All arichas about what they did on Shabbos. The Friedrich Rebbe, they asked Friedrich Rebbe if he should go to Varsha. Friedrich Rebbe said he's staying with the Chassidim, staying with the Bochrim, staying with the Chassidim. They had to take care of all the Bochrim that were in the yeshiva. And the Friedrich, but by Tuesday, they realized that Otvotsk, for some reason, Otvotsk, they felt was getting the brunt of the bombing. And they felt that in a city, they'll just be strategically better placed in a city to be able to deal with getting out of there, with what needs to be done. So the Friedrich Rebbe was not a Polish citizen. He had the right to live. He had a green card. He had a right to live in Poland, but he was a Lithuanian citizen, a Latvian citizen. So the consulate sent a car for the Rebbe and his family. They needed 2 cars. The Rebbe left almost everything in Otvotsk, took with minimal clothes, but took with as many ksovim as he could. His talis and tefillin, and the Baal Shem Tov Siddur. The talis and tefillin, the Baal Shem Tov Siddur, a watch, and a few other talis and tefillin, and the Baal Shem Tov Siddur stayed in a smaller case that the Friedrich Rebbe held on himself, and if not, gave it to somebody else to watch. To Mamash Mesiras Nefesh. The talis and tefillin ended up getting lost. The Siddur not, but. They arrive in Warsaw, and they have to start getting out. But Paul, the Friedrich Rebbe doesn't want to leave yet. Friedrich Rebbe says that Chassidim he has to be together with the Chassidim. So they go to the house. They advise the consulate as they're driving. They were bombing the roads, and the Friedrich. Yeah, you can read it from the description of a lot of the people that were there describe it. Rashad gives an interesting description. The Friedrich Rebbe writes about it. Also, Weinberg writes about it a bit later, but there's a lot of people that write about it. Most of it is obviously printed in the book, from Kahos, Out of the Inferno. A lot of it is there, but they begin to run. There's the bombs that are going on the street. And the Friedrich Rebbe says that don't worry, tells them not to panic, because the Rebbe Rashab is with us. The Rebbe is interceding. Says my father, the Rebbe Rashab is interceding for us, and therefore we're going to be okay. And they make it. It takes them hours. They make it. They see gruesome sights on the way because the bombs are mamish falling on. People are running out of the cars. The Friedrich Rebbe says to keep driving. In the middle, they do pull over. And they arrive in Riga, and the consulate, and in Varsha, the consulate suggests that they go to a non-Jewish area. For some reason, the area where the non-Jews there was a specific area where there were non-Jews that wasn't the Jewish area, but that was for some reason not getting the most of the bombings. And the Rebbe said absolutely not. He's going to the rest of the Chassidim, and he went to the house of Zalman Shmotkin. They go through the house. The bombings are non-stop, constant bombings. The history of all these things are printed, which is why I'm going over it. I'm going over it briefly, just l'shleima se'inyan. The bombings are non-stop. The Friedrich Rebbe insist the house of, just to give a couple of things, the house of Reb Zalman event. They go to Reb Zalman Shmotkin. People start coming to ask the Rebbe what to do. Should they stay? Should they go? Should they escape? Should they try to escape? Some people the Rebbe said to escape. This way you see Pasha often Ruach HaKodesh. Some people the Rebbe said to escape. Other people the Rebbe said to stay. Different people the Rebbe said different things depending on who came in. So the plan was to go and seek refuge in the Latvian consulate, and they were given permission to do that originally. The problem was that the roads were so blocked because of the wall that the only way they were going to get there was with an ambulance. So they decided that the Rebbe and his mother, they couldn't do it all in one go. So the Rebbe and Rebbe Sora can hardly walk. She's an elderly lady by this time. And they decided the Rebbe and the Rebbe Sora are going to go on they're taking the Rebbe on a stretcher. That's the way you're going to get in an ambulance. When Rebbe Sora sees the Frierdiker Rebbe going onto a stretcher, she becomes very emotional. She begins to cry. She says, where are the others? Where's the Alter Rebbe? Where's the Baal Shem Tov? Where's the Mittler Rebbe? She mamash begins to cry out. But as the Rebbe is going into the ambulance, they get a message from the consulate that they can't come anymore. It's not B'chdei Shi'asa. They can't get refuge over there. So they have to stay now in Warsaw for the time being, and they're preparing for Rosh Hashanah. It's Erev Rosh Hashanah, and the Frierdiker Rebbe gave money to buy foods for the Bochrim that were there by Arachova. Rebbe said to buy, it's going to be Yom Tov, it's going to be Rosh Hashanah. Yana Yom Tov, but Rosh Hashanah is Yana Yom Tov, but it's for to buy food by Arachova. It's a lot of money to buy a lot of food. And the Rebbe came out once to take B'dyonis, and they prepared a room by Reb Zalman Shmotkin. They prepared a room where the minion was going to be on that room. About 5 o'clock that afternoon, mamash, a couple of hours before Rosh Hashanah starts, there was an air raid siren. The Rebbe and the family run out. The Shmotkin house takes a direct hit to the extent that the Rebbe and his family are thrown to the other end of the chutzner. And the houses begin to burn. There's house after house after house is getting bombed, and there's flames all over. The only safe place to stand is relatively safe, is under the arches. If you know in Europe how the houses are built in a square. So there's a lot of small arches to get from the garden into the street. So they stand under the arches, but there is the place is becoming extremely crowded. And they managed to procure for the Rebbe and for his mother a chair to sit. In the meantime, Yosef Weinberg, he was a Bach, he's from Poland. So he comes running to the Rebbe. He knows what's going on. He comes running to make sure to see what's going on by the Rebbe. He sees them huddled over there under this thing, waiting for the bombing to stop. And he sees that the house is on fire. So he runs to the house to see what he could rescue from there. And he was able to rescue from the house. He runs to the Rebbe's room, and he's able to rescue the shofris and the Rebbe's garden. When he comes out, the Frierdiker Rebbe gave him this briefcase that he was holding with him the whole time. That had in it the siddur, and the talis and tefillin, and the Baal Shem Tov siddur. And the Rebbe told him to hold it. And just as that happens, a bomb falls on the building across the street. Now they were all concerned. The Polish were concerned that the Germans were going to bomb the area with gas. The concern was there was going to be gas in the bombs. And when the bomb went off across the street and the dust became so dusty, they couldn't breathe, and they were convinced. They became worried that this was the gas. They couldn't breathe. They were worried it was the gas. And the Frierdiker Rebbe's daughter Chana took a wet cloth and put it over the Rebbe's mouth, also over the mouth, and the entire time the Rebbe was sitting there, very, very pale, very serious, extremely serious. It's Erev Rosh Hashanah, very serious, and davening the whole time. The Rebbe told the Bochrim, whoever's around, if they know where the Bochrim are, the Bochrim should come stand next to the Rebbe. Yes? The Rebbe is standing under an arch with buildings burning around them, falling down, bombs flying. The Rebbe says, the Bochrim want to be safe, come stand next to me. Between all of this, the Rebbe asks about a woman, a pregnant woman, where she was. She was the daughter of Shmuel Shmotkin. Where is she? And also about a small girl. The Rebbe's looking around, doesn't see a small girl, a daughter of Reb Chatzah Feigen. The daughter of Reb Chatzah Feigen was eventually found and came back to the Rebbe. But anyway, what's going on at the time is my point. Anyway, so the Rebbe then, they can't be there. Eventually the bombing stops a little bit, and they're able to find refuge in a clinic a little bit further down. They have to carry Rebbe Steiner in a chair, and the Rebbe they support while he walks. The Rebbe was, when he came to the clinic, was in a Goyish area, and it was a non-Jewish clinic, and the Rebbe was very upset that he couldn't be with the Yidden. He was saved. He was very upset that he couldn't be with the Yidden, and the Rebbe stayed there for most of us to make children. Now, in the meantime, in America, they know what's going on in Poland, and they are desperately trying to find out. So first of all, they're desperately trying to they need to get the visas for the Rebbe. They need to get the Rebbe out of Poland. It's the priority. Before they even get a visa to America, the priority is for them to arrange for the Rebbe to go from Poland to Latvia, at least. To do that, they need to get the Rebbe out of Nazi-occupied Poland. How are they going to do that? They first have to find out where the Rebbe is. Get the Rebbe, find out how the Rebbe is going to get from Poland to Riga. Then, how the Rebbe is going to get from Riga to come to America. So the Chassidim in America start working very, very hard. They saw Jacobson together with Chazak Kramer. They find a lawyer, an excellent lawyer who had done a lot of work for Lubavitch. Until now, he had done a lot of work for Lubavitch pro bono, but he said this is going to be a massive case, and this is all consuming. So he charged a fee, which they paid, but was an issue. But they began to work on it. The problem with this lawyer was he was a very by the books guy, so he's finding all the legal ways of getting the Rebbe out of it. In the middle of a war, some of the ways that have to happen is sometimes paying somebody off or doing things behind the scenes. So they began to get Senate, in addition to working on the legalities, they also began to use connections with senators and various different people that they had to try and get the Rebbe to try and get hold of the Rebbe. This is what's going on in America. In the meantime, the Friedrich Rebbe is in a place where there's bombs all around. For Erev Yom Kippur, they decided they were going to go back to the house of the Shmotkin's house. It was a different house, I imagine, because the other house took a direct hit. The Poyol, as they were planning to leave this clinic and go there, the Shmotkin house took they realized it was impossible. They went to check it out. It was too damaged. They weren't able to get back. And the Friedrich Rebbe on Erev Yom Kippur was extremely ungezogen. Very, very, very serious. When he gave the bracha of Erev Yom Kippur, he did not give, generally the bracha is, Sheyizke lachzer b'tshuva shleima, the Rebbe would say. I don't know if they would say Yiddish or Shekhosh, I don't know, but the bracha was about b'choyze b'tshuva, and over here the Rebbe didn't miss it out like Amri. Because it was, I mean, my assumption is, because it was, in a war you need to be saved. The Rebbe quoted two psukim in the bracha for Erev Yom Kippur. Nipol na b'yad Hashem, u'b'yad Odom ale poila. That's what the Rebbe benched the oilam that was there. And the Rebbe said, Leiv nishma v'nitke alekim lo yistivze. That was the Rebbe's bracha to the oilam. They're going to prepare for Kondidrei. I apologize, by the way. It's going to take longer than an hour. I imagine another 20 minutes or so, just to give a time frame. The Rebbe was in a lot of tsar that he didn't have a good Baal Tefillah. They were preparing for Kondidrei, and there wasn't a good Baal Tefillah. How many people were there? There was a minyan. It was barely a minyan. Rosh Hashanah, the first night, didn't have a minyan. Over here, at least they have 10 people. But they was very upset that there was no good Baal Tefillah. So they ran the court of Shmuel Zalmanov. He came and he was the Baal Tefillah. The only thing they did different, the only thing they did different was the Rebbe hurried up Ne'ilah, and they blew shofar because they were concerned by night was the bombings. They were concerned of the bombings. The Rebbe said to blow shofar red by the Yom Kippur, like you could do, blow Yom Kippur, and the Mamish took out Yom Kippur Tenacht. And the Olam went home. Besides, the Friedrich Rebbe asked two people. The Friedrich Rebbe asked two people to stay with him. They asked Yosef Weinberg and some of the name of Reb Dov Ber Schneerson. The Rebbe said to come eat the Suda with him. So they sat down to eat the Suda. there wasn't much food. There was food prepared in the house of Mendel Schmotkin, but there was shrapnel in it, so they couldn't eat it. So whatever food there was, the Rebbe said, what I'll eat, you'll eat. And they sat with the Rebbe and they ate. The Rebbe was in a much better, was in a matzav ruach meroimim. The Rebbe was in an elevated matzav ruach at the time. They sat with their coats, ready to leave, and with their peklach, whatever they had. But they sat for a suda and they sang Nigunim, and the Rebbe verbringt. And in the middle there, then there's bombs going off around. And the Nigunim are mixing with the Nigunim are mixing with the bombs. And this Doiv Beshnersen, he had to call for a maven on how long the bombings are going to take. So in the middle, they're sitting already an hour and something, and the Rebbe asks him, "No, how much longer is it going to be?" So he says, "About another hour and a half." The Rebbe smiled, and they kept on singing a little bit. And Fabring, the Rebbe was moided them with the hands. There's three of them. The Rebbe was moided a lot, and whatever and thing. And then they eventually, so they finished, and they went to travel back to. They begin to make plans. They have to get back into Varsha proper. They're trying to figure out to try and see what they're going to do. The days after Yom Kippur was worse. It got much worse. The Nazis the Germans had bombed the phone lines, so now there's no communication to Warsaw anymore. They had bombed a lot of the water mains had been bombed. So a lot of the buildings didn't have water. Those buildings that were left, a lot of them didn't even have water. I forgot to tell you, I missed out that they began, after they had done the air campaign, they began bombing, they began with cannons. They began shooting with cannons. So with cannons, they told the Olam, people had to go behind as many walls as possible for safety. So the family of the Rebbe was sitting behind the walls, in a hallway. The Rebbe would join them for a little bit, but the Rebbe would end up back in his room after a few minutes. The Rebbe didn't want to sit there. And the Rebbe said that a lot of times that not to be scared. He's not scared. One time, there was a loud bombing, and the Rebbe's hand shook, and the Rebbe said it's shaking because he's not shaking from nervousness. It's shaking because the whole place is shaking. Not to be scared. The Eibush is with us. They went into the famous story from the Friedrich Rebbe. They went into a basement. They went into a shelter, and one of the bombings. And the building they were in the shelter. The building took a direct hit. And everybody in the shelter, you had over the Yidden that were Maminim, Goyim, and then you had Yidden that atheists, Yidden Maminim, from a Yidden, you had atheists, and everybody screamed Shema Yisrael. And that's what Rebbe says, that when the bomb fell, everybody screamed Shema Yisrael. No atheists when it came to it. From that bombing, though, to Medina, came death. She lost most of her hearing from those bombings. Anyway, in the meantime, in America, they're trying to figure out how to get the Rebbe out of Russia, out of there. And they first need to find out. Chaim Lieberman, 2 days before Yom Kippur, Chaim Lieberman goes by foot, manages to get into Riga by foot. He walked 12 days, I think. And this is the first time, now he doesn't know what's going on by the Rebbe anymore, but this is the first time they know, at least the Rebbe's on Natzvot, the Rebbe's in Varsha. They know what's going on. They know the sakona. They understand a little bit that they're a little bit suddenly in touch with what's actually going on. And via the State Department, they begin to they come up with a plan, like they plan as follows. They get in touch with one of the American generals. Get in touch with one of the Germans. He was a German. His father was Jewish. He was a war hero from the First World War. He had been shot in the mouth. So he had a very big scar. He looked like you want to imagine as a Russia from a mole. You imagine these people, with one eye and with a hook. And he has a massive scar. He's a Russia. I don't want to put a picture of him for people to stump, but his picture's available. Pasha looks scary. And the arrangement was like this. He wanted, his cheshbon was that he was hoping that if America ends up winning, if Germany ends up losing the war, he wants to be able to have done some good stuff so that they'll be more lenient on him. He hoped if he's going to save the Rebbe, so he'll get off in the long run. So him working together with somebody else, and I see the time is running, so we'll go through this quickly. So him working together with another one of the Nazi generals, they devise a plan. He gets paid for this, obviously, by the State Department working with the American. Then in the meantime, the State Department is neutral, right? So working with the Americans, the American State Department, the American general working together with a counterpart of his in Germany, who he could trust, enlists that guy takes another one and takes this commander, whatever he was, with this funny mouth, with this big scar, and they're going to take the Rebbe. The Nazi is going to save the Rebbe from Poland, from Varsha, and take him take him to Riga. To cut a very long story short, the Rebbe is now by this time the bombings had stopped, the Polish had surrendered, so the Germans had tried to make some sort of order, some sort of seder out of what's going on in Warsaw, and each road had like somebody in charge of it. Each building, the person in charge of Friedrich Rebbe's building, is a Yid. And the Friedrich Rebbe told him, asked him to make if he can make a sukkah. He wasn't the Frumme Yid. The guy to make a sukkah. He made for the Rebbe a sukkah, and the Rebbe promised him things would be good for him. The Friedrich Rebbe was sitting in a sukkah on sukkahs during the time that the Nazis are starting to take over. They're all in the streets. Walking down the street now, the first people the Germans are coming for are the rabbis, are the rabbanim. So there was a big fear for the Rebbes, for the Rebbe. There was a big fear for the safety of the Rebbe. The Rebbe is priority number one. Not just the Rebbe, all the Rebbes over there are priority number one. These are the ones that the Germans are going to come for first. So they need to get the Rebbe. They need to find the Rebbe. The Rebbe's in hiding. Rashag was going out to try and sort out what they needed, and he was pulled over by a Nazi, and they cut off half his beard, only half, to make whatever. They wanted him to look stupid. Rashag was happy, at least say he's happy. At least he only cut off half. But you're talking here about bizyonis and bushes and it was science is akonos nefashos. A Nazi, Miasa looking like a real Russia looking Nazi is walking down the streets asking everybody, have you seen the Lubavitcher Rebbe? Where's the Lubavitcher Rebbe? And what do you think people are going to say? So when they went out to find the Rebbe, the people of the attack had no idea where it was. When he came to Varsha, some people knew. Nobody is telling this guy that he's that the Rebbe is where the Rebbe is. They into their mind, he's not here to save the Rebbe. He's here to chas v'shalom to hurt the Rebbe. So I never heard of him. I don't know where he is. No idea. It's a war. How are we supposed to know these things? And the guy spends days. The amount of effort the fellow put in to save the Rebbe is Pasha puts in days walking the streets trying to do detective work and to figure out where the Rebbe is. Eventually, he's advised if he says shalom to somebody and he says, I'm here to save the Rebbe, maybe he'll be able to find where the Rebbe is. How he found the Rebbe, I don't know, but eventually he found the Rebbe. And he knocked on the door. And they opened the door, and they didn't know, in the Rebbe's house, they didn't know that they're coming to save the Rebbe. And they got very worried. And the man said, I'm here. They've sent me, I'm in touch with the Americans, and they've sent me to rescue you. Come with me. So the Rebbe asked, is this an order? Are you ordering me to come with you, or are you asking me? So he said, I'm asking, but I would advise you to. So I advise you to come. So the Rebbe said, let me think about it. He said, I don't have time to think. There's no time to think. We must get out of it. So the Rebbe went. The Rebbe and the whole family went. They needed 2 cars. But how are they going to get the Rebbe to Latvia? How are they going to do this? So what they did was they brought 2 cars and they made as if this German together with this Nazi together with this officer, they made as if they've arrested a bunch of spies. They dressed the Rebbe to look like not to look like a Rebbe, yeah. And the whole family they dressed not to look like a Rebbe's family. They could pass the Diavad Derech Nes, they could pass as spies. And their story was that they've arrested the spies and they're arresting them. They're taking them to Berlin. They were relying on the fact that everything was so masudar in Germany that nobody is going to question what's actually going on over here. They're not going to confiscate papers or if you make up papers, they forge documents as if these people are spies and as if they've been sent to arrest them. So they were expecting, people expect Seder Masudar. They got stopped in a few places. Most places, the past one place they did have problems, but they managed, Baruch Hashem, they managed to get out of Poland, and they go to Berlin first. And the Rebbe stays in Berlin over Shabbos in the Jewish building over there. They obviously stay quiet under the radar, but the Rebbe is in Berlin at the beginning of the war, in a Jewish building, and then Sunday, Motzei Shabbos, I think, or Sunday morning, they continued the journey and they took the Rebbe into Latvia. That's when the process begins of the Rebbe leaving from Latvia and getting to America. And the Rebbe is in Latvia for a few months. You're talking here from Tevis, Shvat, and half of Adar or part of Adar. And eventually they managed to get the visas. Again, all the documentation of the correspondence and the visas and all of these things are printed. Are printed. We don't need to go through it over here. And the Rebbe gets on the boat and begins to travel to America. The boat ride is a harrowing journey. The journey. There's a lot of the seas are wavy, are very stormy. Everybody is seasick. For 3 days they couldn't eat. Everybody on the boat. It's overcrowded, the boat. Also, they were stopped once by the Germans, but because it was an American boat, they allowed them to go, which was another nest in and of itself. And they arrive on Ches Adar. They arrive in America. Not Ches, Ches. After 4 o'clock, the port is closed. Now, here's where I want to. Why am I telling you Ches? So now let's go through over here. If you recall, let's go back to what we were discussing. We were discussing that the Frierdiker Rebbe doesn't want to move to America because Matan Torah, the Torah wasn't given in America. And in Ishtalshlus, if you go through Seder Ishtalshlus, not through the general koyach of the world, but in Seder Ishtalshlus, there's no Torah wasn't given in America, so America is on a lower level, and you need an entirely different avodah. If you recall, that's what the Frierdiker Rebbe doesn't want to move to America. Now the Frierdiker Rebbe is in America. When does he arrive? So let me show you something. You think just because the Frierdiker Rebbe comes to America, let me show you over here. We're not going to learn this through inside, obviously a lot, because time permitting. But I want to highlight a couple of points. Tes Adar is the day that America, the center of Chassidus Chabad, came. That the base of Chassidus Chabad came to the lower hemisphere. When did it happen? On Tes Adar. This is what. Now let me focus on why it's important. And what's going on over here? Yodua HaPiskon. We know Shebechatzik Adar Atachten Lohoya Matan Torah Begilum. In Chatzik Adar Atachten, Matan Torah wasn't revealed. Wasn't revealed. The energy of Matan Torah was there because Matan Torah was in the whole world. The energy of Matan Torah, the change that happened was in the whole world. That's a general change. It's a general, a global. If you want to talk in English language, it would be the way it really is. It's a chayis ruchni. There's a new chayis in the world, a whole entirely different chayis in the world that you can now able to be mavarer the matter. But if you're talking here if you want to talk here in English, so there's a whole new energy in the world. However, but in a practical way, it's in through Seder Ishtalshlus. It didn't come into. It wasn't in the lower hemisphere. Now you want to know what was the tremendous chiddush of the Frierdiker Rebbe coming to America? In the lower hemisphere, NASA America's Shal Chassidus Chabad. Wherever the Rebbe is, that's where the base is. So that becomes the base of Chassidus Chabad, Primus HaTorah, Nishmasa Doiraisa. The Rebbe is going to explain the milas of Anoich Hashem Lekecha. The Rebbe is going to go through this. It's a sikha that it's not a hard sikha and it's not a long sikha, and it's advisable to look through the whole thing. But we're not going to do that now. But I'm going to I'm just going to jump to another sikha that's going to discuss the same thing. But I just want to point out what we just saw. What we just saw was that the base moved to America. What happens when the base moves to America? What's the mile of Chassidus Chabad? What is the Chassidus Chabad? Is the primus in the Shmasa Deiraisa. The Shmasa Deiraisa has a mile. And the Maila is, remember, Chassidus, the Rebbe explains, Chassidus is not soid. Chassidus is pnimius. Chassidus is every part of Torah altogether. Pshat, Remez, Drush, soid, it's everything together. So Chassidus Chabad is Torah, all-encompassing Torah. Okay, so now, in the Rebbe says that this, in the Rebbe's life, there's sweet kufas. The Rebbe goes to sweet kufas, the Rebbe's life, I should tell you, the Rebbe also mentioned sweet kufas in Torah Shvi. A couple of weeks before this Sikha, they mentioned sweet kufas in Torah Shvi. There's a shir for another time, which is the concept of three kufas. Every generation has three kufas. But here it's kufa shlish. The first kufa is when the Rebbe was in Russia. And there's Mizvoida was Mesilas Nefesh Mamash, like the others. Second kufa was when he came to Poland. There it was to understand Chabad. Very hard. The Polish were very not, it was very not their style. Chassidus Chabad is not the style of the Polish. And it was a very, very tough for the Rebbe. Very tough. Talking Rabbi language. I mean, it wasn't, but that was the point, was to bring to the Polish people, to bring Chassidus Chabad. The third kufa is when he came to Chatzikat, when he came to America. Then began a totally new thing. He wasn't explaining to people that were already Chassidim, or not, if not Chassidim, they were from Eden. He wasn't explaining to them the Eibishter only. And it wasn't over here only teaching Aleph Beis, working Mamash from Mesilas Nefesh like in Russia. Over here was a totally different thing. It was bringing Chassidus to the Americans. Not only to the American culture, to the American individual, to the place where Matan Torah never came. So it's America is on a lower level, spiritually on a lower level than Russia, and then Eretz Yisrael, obviously. And he's bringing over Chassidus. The Friedrich Rebbe begins, the Rebbe is not over here, and I didn't bring it over here, but the Rebbe begins, the Rebbe gives other examples, where the Friedrich Rebbe began to teach. The Friedrich Rebbe, one of the first things he did, one of the first publications, Akriya V'Akdusha, is Mamorim in Yiddish written for women and children. So you're taking Chassidus and explaining it to women and children, in stories and different things. And this is Chassidus Chabad. And he begins, the Rebbe begins to Pasha take Chassidus and explain it to the, it's not only the Rebbe is teaching people Torah mitzvahs, the Rebbe is teaching people Chassidus in this way. And furthermore, the Rebbe talks, and then, but this is something that needs to be highlighted, and the Rebbe begins a new campaign. It's the middle of the war. The Rebbe begins a new campaign. We have Yidden, we should do tshuva, and Mashiach is going to come. This campaign went on until Tafshin Ches, until the beginning of founding of the State of Israel. Till the beginning of then, that campaign went on. After that, the Rebbe said that it pushed off, that it was a special time for Mashiach, but the Sultan managed to get away with it. It pushed it off. The Rebbe gave us a candy and people, and pushed off Mashiach coming. But, okay. So what do we have? So we've seen over here that there's this new Tkufa. Chassidus comes to America. Chassidus comes to America means suddenly we're elevating where? We're elevating America. We're elevating where Matan Torah never was. Now, if you recall at the beginning, I began this whole thing by talking about the Machloikus in the Alter Rebbe and Talmidei Amad. Suddenly, when in the time of the Alter Rebbe, the time was not right. The time of the Alter Rebbe is beginning something new. He's explaining Elikus in Seichel Adam, where a regular person, Rob Jungen like us, can sit for an hour, can learn a Maimon Chassidus, can elevate our minds a little bit, and can begin to terher Elikus. We can begin to we can begin to understand. We can begin to perceive the world in a ruchniistic way. Now, when it first starts, you need to first bring that into the world. That needs to start like that. It can't start. You can't jump straight to the end. We've discussed before, we discussed before that the whole world is evolving, has been since the beginning, since Adar Marishon, since Chet Eitzadas, and since the beginning of creation. The whole world is evolving towards this time of Mashiach, towards the time when everyone's going to perceive Elikus and Olam Hazeh. So they go through tkufas. The first till Matan Torah is till the Mabel is one tkufa, and then till Matan Torah is another tkufa, and then goes Matan Torah. The Eibusha teaches Yidden. The Eibusha teaches us how to do the actions that we're going to do when Mashiach comes. 613 mitzvahs they're not do this. Sometimes we think that when we do a mitzvah, some people think they do a mitzvah to get Gan Eden. So we say, it's kinderish, like doing something for a prize. What's Dina B'Tachtoinim? Mashiach is going to come. So you're doing a mitzvah also for a prize, just a bigger prize. It's not what it is. Mitzvahs are not for a prize. Mitzvahs are, the Eibusha created the world with 613 klolim. This is how the world runs. This is how it has to happen. So the Eibusha gives us mitzvahs, the 613 mitzvahs, are not what you do in order to bring Mashiach. It's conditioning the world. It's the way it's things that we would do without being told. Just like you don't kill, it's a human nature not to kill. So not to mix milk and meat should be human nature also. Because we don't live within the time of Mashiach, they have to tell us what to do. And the whole process of doing it is in order to get to the time, in order to condition our bodies, in order to condition ourselves to live in the laws of the universe that will be when Mashiach comes. Then comes a Gilui of Kabbalah, and then comes a Gilui with the discovery of the Zohar. It starts already beforehand, with Shimon Bar Yochai writing it, and then comes the discovery of the Zohar and the Arizal, and then comes the Baal Shem Tov, and the Alter Rebbe begins to teach Halikus. Now, not only do we know how to act the way we should, not only do we know how to act the laws of when Mashiach will be here, these 613 ways we will act when Halikus is Begoloi, we now have Halikus because Begoloi in our head, in our minds. We're able to perceive Halikus, we're able to perceive the Eibush. Yeah, we're able to see higher than the world. That the Alter Rebbe, when the Alter Rebbe starts, the world is not ready now to bring that all over. It can't come to America yet. It can't come to this lower level of the world. It has to go to the highest levels. It has to go first. First it has to start. First of all, in Chatzi Kadra Elyon, has to start in the hemisphere where the Torah was given. But it also has to be done with different people. It has to start with different types of chassidim, a whole different type. People have to, but after that, you weren't going to teach chassidus to anybody. The Friedrich Rebbe comes to America, thinking of moving to America. The Rebbe says America is not ready yet for the Gilui of Chassidus. Chatzi Kadra Tachton, the lower hemisphere, is not yet ready for Chassidus. Until the Rebbe is forced. And the Rebbe says in the letter that we saw before, and the Rebbe says it publicly also in the Sikha, the Rebbe said, I didn't choose to come here, I was forced to come here. Ashkocha Elyoina brought me here. Why did Ashkocha Elyoina bring? Because now is the time. 10 years after the Rebbe said that America is not ready for Chassidus to come there. So, at this time, it was ready to come. Now, I'm going to point out one more thing, and then we're going to end. The Rebbe points out the Maila of number 9. If you remember, the Friedrich Rebbe was on the boat on Ches and couldn't get off the boat on Ches because he arrived too late. Nothing happens as Oistam. Came too late, so therefore he's going to stay on the boat another day. It happens every single year. We know this from every Yom Tov. The Seder's Manim, things get stuck. There's a cycle, and things get stuck in the same Seder's Manim. And the Seder's Manim of the things that comes test. What's the mile of test? It's often Seder B'Tishi B'Adar. So every test Adar happens the same thing. It happens what? This Gilui of this new basis of what? This new Shlav in Chabad. Remember, if Chabad is 7 doiros, which Rebbe explains, Chabad is 7 doiros, which means that we've been living the actions of Mashiach by mitzvahs, and then we're living the seichel, and each level of seichel comes lower and lower and lower, or is more and more refined, and we're elevating the world more and more until we can finally elevate in Doira Shvi. We can finally elevate the tafkid now is to elevate the whole world in this way. So B'Shiva Adar on the 9th of Mitchilas Hayom or La'achri Shesh Hashleimus Shmoyne Yom. Usually we say like this: 7 is a shtalshlus, 9 is Lamayla Me shtalshlus. The Rebbe says, 8 is Lamayla Me shtalshlus. What's 9? The Rebbe says, 1 second. 9 can't be lower than 8. Why? Because you have to keep going up. Obviously, there's a reason for 9. You have 9 because you finished 8. So now what's 9? So the Rebbe says like this: we know the Maila of 8. Okay, let's connect this Mashiach. When we say moving like this, you have to say it's obvious that the day number 9 is going to be higher than day number 8. Otherwise, there's no growth. If there's no growth, it doesn't happen. What is it? When Mashiach is going to come, there's going to be in Keser, there's going to be in a later, there's going to be a harp not only of 8 strands. So there's not going to be only 8 notes. There's going to be 10 notes. Now 7 notes. Mashiach is going to be 8. There's also going to be 10. So 9 is preparing. Day number 9 is higher than Ishtalshus already. Say that you have already the whole Chassidus, the Mailam Ishtalshus. Day number 9 is the preparation for number 10. 10 is Shleimus, which we don't have over here. I didn't bring it in, but 10 is Shleimus. It's completion. All 10 spheres, all 10 middas, everything. But it's also preparation. 9 is the preparation for getting to 10. 10 is that level of Mashiach, the level of Kes, which time doesn't allow us to elaborate on. But the point is, why did Friedrich Rebbe come to America on Tes Adar? Why did he have to stay on the boat another day? Is because this is what the purpose of coming to America was. The purpose of America, the purpose why the Rebbe came to America was because it finally came down into this lowest level. We'll finish over here. It took us half an hour longer than I expected. But to conclude, that this is our entire avodah. Our avodah is to make a dirib b'tachtonim. Our avodah is by doing ma'aseh mitzvahs. This is what the Rebbe taught us. This is the kudah that the Rebbe brings out. That it's not that we do mitzvahs because there's no choice. Because he came to America, nobody was keeping mitzvahs. Now you have to keep mitzvahs. It's not like that at all. It's now we can teach the entire world how to live a life of Mashiach. We're able to elevate much, much lower. We're up to the lowest of the low. That's what we're up to now. We're up to the final levels of bringing Elikus mamash lamata. So on Tes Adar began a whole new tafkid. In a way, the tafkid of the Shvi, this tafkid that the Rebbe taught us that learning a Maimech Chassidus, teaching somebody Tanya, is the same as putting on him tefillin. Not the same, says putting on him tefillin. It's all the same nakuda. It's all the same yisoi. It's not that he doesn't do a mitzvah, so we're going to help him do the mitzvah, but it's all the same yisoi of preparing mamish, the lowest elements of the world, to be makabel, to condition the lowest elements of the world for Mashiach's coming. And this began by force for the Friedrich Rebbe, in a way, the way the Rebbe says. It began not by choice, but by it became the time for it. Like Deborah wrote, I should have 10 years earlier. It wasn't the time yet, but theoretically 10 years earlier I would have suffered much less. The Rebbe says, yeah, that now was the time. Who showed that now was the time? The Eibishter. It wasn't the Friedrich Rebbe says Doira Shishi at this time of Doira Shishi after I brought Chabad to Poland. Now it's time to move to America. The Rebbe says no, it's not time to move to America. Then the Rebbe was told. That was the Rebbe told by the war. Says by the sheer fact that the Rebbe had to escape and end up in America. That's what taught us what our next shlav is. Anyway, the Rebbe should help that we should finally be mamala everything that we need to be mamala, and we should achieve everything that we need to achieve. And it's already enough already. It's a bit ridiculous. Mashiach should already we're talking so much about the point of Chabad, and the point of Isboinus, and the point of mitzvahs, Maisa mitzvahs. Loshen Zayin, Loshen Kumen, B'meira B'yamein Zal sich then. Mit den Rebben, we should verbringen ready for Purim. Should be a Purim Masholish for all of us in Eretz Yisrael. And Sunday night should be a big verbringen. Yeah.